framework. And now I'm going to open up the floor to questions and answers. Yes.
Thank you very much for all the information forwarded, and I'm just curious.
Could you just tell us your name and where
Oh,
you're from? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm Pauline Pierce, aka the Happy Heroine, and so I've had to deal with quite a few of these similar issues, and I can relate to a lot. Being a black woman, when I was a young girl going to school, I was always told by my parents, to do well, you have to do twice as well as a white man. Because if you go for a job and you need 2 A-levels, believe if the white man needs 2 A-levels, you're going to need 4, maybe 5. And that's always been embedded in my head. And I embedded that in my children's head. And all the families that I know and grow with, it was the same situation. And we need to get out of that mindset. This is 2012 we're living in now. And if we haven't moved on, I'm 47 next week, and it's still the same thing going on. And this was put in my head from a young child. So 47 years of this same prejudice going on within our schools. My cousin faced the same issues, being a Rastafarian. She had problems with religion issues. It was all right for all the other children's age, you say, to the Sikh children to wear their baubles on their head, but the Rastas had to cut their locks. Unfair. But what I wanted to raise my issues about was this 5 is too young to fail. This was something that was pushed in my hand yesterday as I was arriving. I was very concerned about this because I thought, well, if we're saying our Afro-Caribbean and ethnic minority children are already behind, what are we doing to step them up? If children are already going to be quizzed and tested at the age of 5, I don't know what your opinions are. Please help me, because it really distressed me to read it. Do you want the leaflet? I don't know if you're aware of it.
Morning.
Hello.
I moved from Hackney 4 years ago, and I've watched your progress. I'm sorry you didn't win your by-election, but you have
Came third.
You have to, yeah, well, been there before, but you need to carry on. Look, one of the great benefits of the coalition for our party is the excellent work that Sarah Taylor, who's just no longer in the government, did on early years. And there's more to come. More qualifications, so we've got a qualified person in every early years centre. And this will start to address the problems. I'm not seeing that leaflet, but from what you say, what are in that leaflet? Of course, it is fundamentally wrong, but we've just been talking today in various places about extending the concept of the pupil premium downwards into preschool education. And I think that is going to have a very positive impact on the concerns that I share with you. And should start, because these things take a little time to get started, should start to improve that situation that you described.
Just very briefly, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but actually I do remember looking at reports which were actually saying that when tracked through the key stages, key stage 1 to key stage 4, that actually black children in key stage 1 and 2 were actually doing very well. They were actually very near the top of, well, they actually started at the top of the class and stayed there or thereabouts to key stage 2. But it was actually when they entered secondary school that something dramatic happened and absolutely plummeted down the table. And by the end of key stage 4, by the time of their GCSEs, are actually bottom of the table, along with traveller, gypsy and traveller children. And obviously there's a big debate about why that's the case, and I think that some people tend to put too much emphasis on chaos of the family, on youth culture, urban culture, and so on. And I think that those do play a part. in it. But at the same time, I would like to see the education system. Some schools are more enlightened than they do actually try to recognise the temptations and the challenges facing young people. But too many other schools don't. They actually treat the schools as a factory. And as a result of that, the young people just have to sort of bottle up their frustrations which come from outside the school, or their temptations when it comes to the X factor lure of riches and fame, or when it comes to the cult of death, if you like, that's actually being promoted sometimes by stars and pulling people away from themselves. So we need to actually stop problematizing the black community themselves when it comes to the huge sort of failure within secondary schools, because we know that black children don't start out their school life failing.
Thank you, Lester. I'm going to take another question, and particularly for Brian, if anyone's got a question, because he's going to leave us very soon.
Thank you, Javed Khan, another party member. I'm a guest here. I'm a former teacher and director of education in London Borough. Comment for Brian and a question for Lester, if I may. Brian, your point about data and its use and needing to understand the improvements that have arisen because of the use of data. I fully agree with you. I've been in many head teachers' offices and the data is exceptional now. However, my contention is, in the context of the debate today, that the data still isn't good enough. And that is particularly, we still have this mad approach to collection of ethnicity data, which is wholly inappropriate in 21st century Britain, I would argue. We still ask kids to tick boxes like, what's your ethnicity, and Africa is a box. I mean, have you seen the size of Africa on the map? What does that tell us about the child? Almost nothing. Indian is a box. I mean, India has 365 languages, almost as many faiths. As you will know, Chair, if you travel from Delhi to Bangalore, that's like going from London to Athens. And that's one box. So the data just doesn't tell us enough. And in the challenge of equalities insists that we know more about our children. Add to it a mix of mixed marriages and so on, and the complexity is enormous. We're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of knowing what we need to know about our children. Question for Lester. I really enjoyed your comments, Lester. Do you believe that the education system in this country is at worst racist and at best institutionally racist?
Here, because I'm talking about it from the perspective of a head teacher. And if we're talking about achievement in our schools for every child, regardless of their background and all the advantage and disadvantage they've got, then the key question is, are they achieving? And if not, what can we do about it? Now, the leaflet the lady there talked about is about the phonics test and about testing children at 5 and them failing a test. But the issue here is, that we want children to be literate. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on. And the danger is that we could be analysing loads and loads of data, and we could do it to the nth degree, but we wouldn't actually be addressing the issue. Can that child read? Because I know, I've seen the research, that a child who is behind in their reading at 5 when they start school will get progressively further behind as they go through. And I've got a lovely graph which I could put up on a slide here. It's just where the lines get wider and wider apart, and of course it's no surprise that the children at the bottom of that line are the ones from all of the backgrounds that you would expect them to be. So what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that those children have access to those fundamentals that they need in the curriculum at the earliest stages, regardless of what their background is, and that we do everything we can to help them. Otherwise we're in danger of just, we're fiddling about the edges, and I agree we need to analyse data and all the rest of it, but we really need to be making sure those children can achieve.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to put in an intervention here and ask Janet to say something about the data and categorisation and how it relates to restorative justice, particularly in the context of exclusion. Because I think this is a very contentious kind of issue. Thank you very much for raising it. Yes, thank you.
Having along those lines, what tends to happen in schools is that restorative justice comes into play regarding behaviour, poor behaviour, looking at fixed term exclusions, and it tends to be children who have got lower down the scales in their ability. So you see the group of 5-year-olds, you watch them as they go up, you meet them again in the secondary school and they're underachieving and they're beginning to show signs of low-level disruption. So is that the same group are we looking at? And then we see them again as they take the wrong road, they get into difficulty, they get excluded, they get into crime, and then you meet them again in young offender institutes. And what they have in common is that they've got stuck in the system and their behaviour has displayed those where they've got stuck, and the fact that their abilities are so low, and there's lots of young people who haven't achieved anything anywhere near that they should have done, sitting in young offender institutes, taking the wrong road. And you talk to them and they say to you, I haven't spoken to anyone like this about my education since I was at school. I wish I'd been able to, I wish I'd had the opportunity to talk and have somebody to talk to, and really think about, I wish I'd said I didn't understand my schoolwork. And it seems to be a common failing when you watch them grow, and you just think to yourself, those children in the class who aren't achieving, look at that group and analyse that group. Why aren't they achieving? What is it about them? They're very good at trying to avoid work, do lots of knocking about in class, low-level disruption because they can't access the class that they're in. They can't access the lesson they're learning, so they start mucking about, and then it just carries on, and then they get excluded and it just carries on, and then they either end up not with any achievements when they leave school, or they've taken the wrong road. And that's really quite a shame that you can't have the intervention there early on in school. And most of the schools have lost so much funding with that additional support. The mentoring has gone, the family welfare, education, and the pastoral care has all gone. It's been, the funding has suffered. So now they're back in their classes expecting to get these achievements in their classes from the age of 5, and they're being missed, and they'll just get missed throughout the system.
Thank you. Lester, I think we're going to have to end our session on your answer, so you get the final word, Lester.
Thank you. Well, to just answer Javid's question about whether the school system is racist, I think that it's difficult to say that it's racist when white working class are suffering as well in the system. But I think that we can actually say that it is institutionally racist in terms of its outcomes, which is rather different from the intention. Because the Macpherson report defined witting and unwitting racism. But I also think that when it comes to the many black kids who are failed, if you go to YouTube, you'll actually see fantastic rap, fantastic poetry, which is what it is. But yet those people actually fail at English. And this is not just for black children as well, there are many white rappers as well. But why is it the case that they are actually failing? I think we need to ask ourselves those questions. There's a huge amount of talent out there which is actually excluded from school, not because they're dumb, but because they are talented. Because the curriculum is not interesting and engaging now, because they're not taught about the history of mathematics, for example, and how where that originates from, and the history of astronomy, or the history of they don't feel engagement with the system, and get frustrated, and that's classed as disruptive behaviour, and then they're actually kicked out. So I think that we do need to be asking ourselves these questions. Also, when it comes to drug dealers, if there's any successful drug dealers out there, they are fantastic entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
And why is it the case that they are not taught, put in touch with people who have entrepreneurial skills? I mean, many people are trying to do this off their own back outside the education system. I know people who are entrepreneurs who are getting themselves together, going into schools. They are having to force themselves onto schools in order to get in touch with the pupils. And I think it should be the other way around. In the school, all head teachers should be going out of their way, literally bursting out the school doors to contact these people, to put them in touch, because we know that when it comes to disadvantaged people, they don't have the connections. Sometimes they don't have family, father figures and so on. And as a result of that, You know, the only people they see being successful are the people who are, you know, up to no good. And you know, this is yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Well, thank you very much. Two of them because of the time, but thank you very much as an audience for listening, participating, and of course I think this is going to be an ongoing debate, and I think we've got a long way to go, and we've all come a long way, but there is a long way to go, and I hope you'll stick with us and support this report, and the feedback on it is essential so that we do get it right. Thank you very much everyone, and have a good evening.